He was a father. He was a friend. He was a grandfather.
Candles and flowers in honor of Ricardo Portillo at a recent vigil.
He's just really outgoing. He was a really happy person. He never had bad feelings for anybody.
Police say the 46-year-old soccer referee was killed by a senseless punch to the face an enraged 17-year-old goalie threw after being yellow carded at a Taylorsville soccer game.
He pressed my hand really hard. I was like, Daddy, we're going to be okay. He saw me. He started crying and he said no.
Tears from a tight community and comfort from family, some having traveled from Mexico as Portillo's brain injury worsened.
He took my daddy away from me, and I feel sorry for him.
Meanwhile, the 17-year-old suspect remains in a juvenile detention center as detectives consider possible new charges.
If he was old enough to do what he did, then he's responsible to pay for it.
The player's coach, a close friend of Portillo, wants security at games and better education about youth violence.
We need to talk to our kids about being nonviolent, talk to them about sportsmanship, talk to them about respecting the referees.
Portillo had twice been injured by aggressive soccer players over his 8 years reffing.
We told him to stop, but it was his passion. He donated all his organs. He helped a lot of people. And in a way for us, for me, it's knowing that he'll still be around.
On the phone with us from Racine, Wisconsin is Barry Mano. Mano is the president of the 19,000-member National Association of Sports Officials. The organization has officials in all levels of sports, ranging from recreation and youth leagues to the NBA, the NFL, and college basketball. Barry, thank you very much for taking some time with us. I understand from our producer that you were not surprised by this incident. Can you talk about the culture in sports that would lead to something like this?
Well, let me say that I'm disappointed that this all happened, of course. The statement I made, this has sort of been a slow train coming. There have been physical assaults against sports officials for some decades, and it's been growing with each passing year. And so that we come to this horrible point of an amateur sports official being killed in the line of duty didn't completely surprise me. So, you know, sports is simply life with the volume turned up in some measure. And so we see things in everyday life, we see things on TV and on the internet that give all of us pause about how we treat each other, how we act towards each other, how we act out, how we accept when we get a decision that's something that we don't want to hear or we feel is unfair. How do we handle that kind of news? You know, sports lays all that bare. And that's what we saw in Taylorsville, Utah, unfortunately.
Manny, if not the referee in this case, of course, the violence could have been directed toward another player, perhaps a fan in the stands. I'm curious, what are you telling other refs? How should they be conducting themselves in games moving forward in light of this incident?
You know, for most of our lives in officiating, what we needed to do was to learn the rule book and go out on the field, the court, or the pitch and enforce those rules. But today, there's truly a paradigm shift, to use the current phrase. Not only do we need to know the rules and know where to stand and enforce those rules, but there's this completely, this overlay of what we call game management that has been introduced. We need to understand the environment in which we find ourselves, which goes beyond simply the rule book. So our job is to understand that players might be getting agitated with each other during the contest, and there's some things that we need to do to calm those things down. We have these just incessant interactions with coaches, certainly at the youth and the rec level. These interactions with coaches who are upset and unhappy, and fans / parents, all those things now play out in this environment that the men and women who officiate, they find themselves. It wasn't that way in the old days, in quotes.
You know what, and the truth be told, there's some role modeling going on here. This could have easily, just as easily, been a parent, because parents have behaved very poorly at these sporting events. And so perhaps that plays a role in emboldening players and students to feel entitled to act this aggressively as well.
Yeah, something and you're making an exclamation point and a good one. Something that needs to be asked is, this 17-year-old goalie got some news that he didn't like. He got yellow carded. And then sort of his instinctive reaction was to pound on somebody. That's disturbing. I mean, have we come to a point as a society where things have gotten so loud and so argumentative, and we just can't seem to accept when something doesn't go our way, and that's what sports is supposed to be teaching us, that we are going to get decisions that are unfair, or we don't like them, or in fact they end up being wrong upon review. But there they are. We need to learn from sports and then take that into our larger lives.
Barry, is the answer to this, and understandably this is this specific incident is isolated, but certainly violence on the athletic field is not new. But is the answer then simply increasing the law enforcement present on the soccer field or the basketball court or wherever? Or does it mean implementing some sort of training for the athletes so that they understand how they should and should not be responding to calls that they don't like?
Having formal security on site at the youth and rec level is something that needs to be done. It's not a panacea, but it needs to be done, just because I think it would have some chilling effect on bad behaviors if you have somebody there identified in that role. But really, this has to do with the parents and the coaches more than anything. When you get to the referee level, we're there in the enforcement division, and our job is to be more courageous, to make sure that bad behavior is identified and it's penalized. This really starts with coaches and parents instilling in those athletes what, in fact, this is all about. And what this is all about is not winning the game. I know we like to have a W versus an L, but fundamentally, at the youth and the rec level, that can't be what this is about. I mean, at the National Association of Sports Officials, we witness such things as football, pee-wee football, 7- and 8-year-olds playing football, and parents are sending in videotapes of those games to the commissioner because they want to review it. I mean, are we kidding ourselves here?
Yeah.
What's going on? I mean, please give us a break. So those of us in officiating have a very tall order to try to work our way through that type of environment and have a game that's fair and safe and ends up at a good result.
Yeah, it is a sad state of affairs. It would appear that at least in some of these cases that sportsmanship has been taken out of sports. Barry Mano, we want to thank you very much for taking some time to speak with us.
You bet. Glad to be here.